I recently discovered the beautiful world of underrated manga, and sometimes things can get pretty weird down here, like a manga where the power system is based on your name, or a manga where an AI goes on an epic journey with a little girl, or even a manga that's a combination of Sherlock Holmes, Harry Potter, and Naruto. And those are some of the underrated manga I'm going to show you today. I'll explain to you why you need to read them and also what sets them apart from much more popular series. And even though I think they're all absolute bangers, I made sure to include very different manga so that everyone can find at least one thing that they love. The first underrated manga we're talking about is written by the guy who made Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which won Anime of the Year, and for some reason, no one is talking about it. But why? Imagine you live in a world where your name gives you superpowers. So for example, maybe your name is Aiden, which means little fire, so you can create fire. Maybe your name is Olivia, which means olive tree, so you have the power to wrap things around these like massive tree branches. Or maybe your name is Bob, in which case, sorry. No, I'm joking. Robert or Bob means bright, which means that maybe you have the power to create bright lights from your fingers. Shout out to all my Roberts out there. This is the world of no/name, or no name. But here's where it actually gets interesting. There's an agency that needs to make sure that people don't give their children, insane names. Like, imagine if someone called their son Thor and now they're like suddenly a god of thunder. I mean, yeah, that would be pretty cool actually. And that's exactly where our two main characters come in. This is Ralph, and he has the power to create 3 different wolves with 3 completely different abilities, like healing, for example. And this is Ursula. She can turn into a bear. Yeah, that's it. Both of them are part of the Nordic Naming Bureau, which is the agency I was talking about. The cool thing about this naming power system is that it's part of the world these people live in the moment they're born. And even though it's a super simple power system, honestly, the thing I love about it is that it's a huge part of the story. Like, the reason this whole story is happening in the first place is because of the names people have and the fact that our main characters have to control that. And the first thing that I thought is that this might be a little bit dumb, because if 2 people have the same name, won't they just have the exact same powers as well? But then I saw this. So actually there are 2 characters called Ralph, but they have completely different wolves, and I assume they also have completely different abilities. On top of that, Ralph and Ursula are really cool and interesting main characters. They're trying to be good guys like most main characters, but unlike most main characters, they are members of this organization that actually does really terrible things. And this makes the manga so fun to read. But the best part is that you're really getting that same quality of writing that you might get from Cyberpunk Edge Runner. The story is so good and so full of mystery that you just want to keep reading until you discover that it's only 6 chapters long, so yeah, you can't. And even though No Name won an award, it's still very short, which is probably why not many people are talking about it. But the next underrated manga I'm going to show you is slowly becoming a shonen masterpiece. This is the story of Tao and Alma. They're both members of the troubleshooter agency, which will pretty much solve any kind of problem as long as you're willing to pay for it. And when I say problems, I mostly mean getting rid of humans turning into demons. Gokurakugai is a manga that's slowly gaining popularity, even though chapters are only coming out every month, which is so painful, but it also means that the authors are getting more time to make an actual good manga. And that's a good thing. It feels so satisfying to read because alongside the main story, Tao and Alma are always going on secondary missions. This means you get to know the main characters, which is always nice, but you also get to know the people they're trying to help out. And some of these secondary characters have so little screen time, or have manga time, I don't know how you call it exactly, but they're still amazing. And these side quests are also a really good way to explore this very unusual world they live in. But weirdly, the problem is that there aren't too many action scenes. So what does this manga do about it? Look at this moment where they just cut a demon in 2. Or this moment where they cut a demon in 2. And even this moment where, it's just a regular fight and it looks pretty sick. When we finally get to see some action scenes, they are great. They are so well drawn and they're just so hype. But this is the part of this manga that I think is even more underrated. If you've ever played Devil May Cry games, it's almost impossible not to see the resemblance with Gokurakugai, an agency that helps people destroy demons, with one of them being a half demon, half human, and the other one being a gunslinger. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's a solid 0% chance it's not at least a little bit inspired by Devil May Cry. And as someone who has played these games, this fact is just so awesome. I've read a few manga here and there to try to combine this aspect of horror and gore with a sense of fun and action. It's so rare to find a manga like Gokurakugai that actually manages to perfectly balance these things. So if you love stuff like Devil May Cry, or if this general vibe kind of sounds appealing to you, You're going to love this. But what if I told you that the next manga is so underrated that it's probably one of the best kept secrets in the manga industry? And some people are even going as far as calling it the next Vinland Saga. The year is 1294, and everything in this world is pretty much what you might expect from your typical medieval fantasy manga. Or is it? Unlike your typical medieval fantasy manga, our main character isn't some kind of brave warrior with some kind of noble objective. No, he's a musician who plays the bugle nonetheless. And even though he is a member of a mercenary group, all he wants is to eventually follow his dream of becoming a musician. This is the bugle call, and it kind of reminds me of Free Ren and Delicious in Dungeon in the sense that it's part of this new generation of medieval fantasy anime and manga that try to innovate on this really saturated genre. I think that's especially refreshing when you consider how many isekai are set in this kind of world. And listen, I haven't seen too many isekai, but it's already too much, okay? The thing with this manga is that it doesn't feel generic or like a copy of something that already exists because they add so many original elements to it. There are a variety of characters with completely different goals, powers, and personalities. Like this guy, who is the literal pope and is wearing a flute on his head for some reason. Or this girl, who is probably the strongest character in this entire series, but she's also a child in the body of an adult. Or even this guy, who is literally immortal. But the story in general is just so freaking good. Even though I only mentioned music, it's actually a huge part of what makes this manga so special. Check this out. So at some point, the main character learns that he has like the power to help out soldiers with his music, and this gives us stunning panels like this one. But even though this manga does so many things incredibly well, I want to show you one thing that it does better than almost any other manga out there. It's true that the main character has this unusual music power, right? But the power system itself is actually super straightforward. If you have a horn on your head, it means you're a Ramus, which basically gives you superpowers that regular people don't have. So, for example, the main character, the really strong girl, and the immortal guy, they all have this horn, but there are a bunch of other characters that have it too. And what makes this power system amazing is that it's not really about regular fights, even though the regular fights are really good. Instead, it's much more like a game of chess where the characters need to use their powers in combination. Check out this example. So there's a scene where a group of people with these horns is actually trying to invade a castle. But the thing is, they get completely destroyed because they were basically told to go out there and just fight instead of actually thinking about the best ways of using their powers. A lot of people, me included, think that the bugle call might become huge if it continues being this good. But I personally think that the next manga has even more potential. You know the crazy part? It is so underrated that I had no idea it even existed before last week. Imagine you're born with mysterious electric powers. That's already pretty intense, but now imagine you were raised by an AI that looks like a young girl, but she's actually a 70-year-old robot. And now imagine if you had never met another human in your entire life, so you decide to go on an epic journey with this AI robot so that you can experience the world for the first time. This is Aeryo and the Electric Doll. And here's the thing, this story is actually set in the future, but the reason one of the main characters is an AI robot while it looks like we're kind of in the 1600s is because there was a massive war between humans and AI. And to beat the AI, humans had to get rid of electricity. And that brings me to the first thing this manga does so well. The world building is original and extremely satisfying because it combines this really old aesthetic where there's no electricity with this really modern technology. And it feels genuinely incredible to discover the history of what happened to this world through the eyes of these two completely different characters. The relationship between Aeryo and Anji is awesome. And it's one of the other things that makes this manga so enjoyable to read. They always need to be together because if Aeryo doesn't use her electricity powers, she'll explode. And if Anji doesn't receive electricity, she just won't work. It's the kind of classic story where you have a warm and kind character accompanied by a really cold character, and you get to see how they grow with each other. These interactions can be kind of funny, but they can also be pretty emotional. And let me tell you right now, the emotional parts are fantastic. There are so many touching moments that really resonated with me. Like when Aeryo cries because she's never met another human, or when Aeryo and Anji help this lady give birth to a baby. Those aren't the kind of epic emotional moments that made me want to cry like in One Piece or Naruto. They're much more subtle. They're much more wholesome and beautiful moments. The art style is absolutely gorgeous, and it makes this journey so much more satisfying. It almost kind of reminds me of Berserk for some reason, but regardless, some of these panels are truly beautiful. Like, just check this out. This is a panel showing a character's face, and this is a panel showing this city. And you can really tell the person drawing this is a master because they're both so freaking good. Considering all the AI stuff that's currently happening, I feel like this story is going to resonate with so many people because it hits so close to home. Currently, the biggest series out there are shonen like JJK or One Piece, or even upcoming stuff like Sakamoto Days or Dandadan. So it feels extremely refreshing to get something a bit calmer, but it's amazing in a completely different way. And it's less than 30 chapters, which is long enough to enjoy, but still short enough that it doesn't take you forever. But you know what? The next manga is not necessarily the best one on this list. It's probably not even the most underrated one on this list, but it sure as heck is my favorite one on this list, and I need to show you why. Kaido and Asaf work for the Order of Magical Resonance, which basically means they're the magic police. And together they investigate the magical world and its crimes, but more specifically, witches. And we're not talking My Little Witch Academia witches. We're talking witches. Because here's the thing. Kaido only looks like a magic anime waifu because of a witch's curse. In reality, she actually looks like this. So even better, this is the Witch and the Beast, and in this manga, there are only two ways of breaking a witch's curse. Receiving a loving kiss from a prince, or beating the shit out of the witch who cursed you. Or there's actually a third way, which is kissing any kind of witch, but it's only temporary, so it's not necessarily worth it. The relationship between the two main characters is great, and pretty hilarious sometimes. They are so different from each other that you have no idea what's going to happen between them. I mean, sure, they work together, but Guido makes it very clear that when she breaks the curse, Asaf is the first person she's going to destroy. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. And the cool part is that this dynamic even has an impact on the way they fight. Check this out. So I took a couple of panels of them fighting, and here's a bunch of the spells Asaf uses, but here you can see that Kaido, yeah, she doesn't give a crap about spells. Like, there's a panel where she literally wears a brass knuckle, which is wild. It kind of reminds me of Harry Potter mixed with shonen, which is a weirdly awesome combo. The art is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just look at these details. God damn! And not only the environment, this manga just has a way to make every single action scene look so epic. And somehow there are more things this manga completely nails. The character design is awesome. Asaf looks nothing like a regular main character, but I think it just works. The setting is so freaking aesthetically pleasing. I mean, look at this. Are you kidding? Listen, I know nothing about architecture, but if you're into architecture, I feel like you're going to love this. There's also an element of mystery and horror added on top of all of this, which works so well with the general vibe of the manga. So, is this like Harry Potter, Sherlock Holmes, and shonen put together? You bet it is. You bet. Do you know what the craziest part is? I'm only at the beginning of the series, and they have already changed the pair of the main character. Like, once in a while, they also change the pairs you follow. So like, instead of Asaf, now you're getting this necromancer lady, and instead of Kaido, you're getting this guy with an eye patch. So, you know what? I'm not sure, but it's definitely possible that once in a while they change the pairs you follow, which is so sick because it changes the adventure, it changes the characters, and it changes the type of magic. I kid you not when I say that this is one of my favorite things I've recently read, and the first chapter alone is perfect. But when I discovered that there's like 50 more, I feel like The Witch and the Beast takes inspiration from a bunch of sources, but I've never read a manga that perfectly combines all these things with shonen. Like, usually when series take inspiration from a bunch of different sources, it feels like they kind of fall short in at least one of them. But The Witch and the Beast feels really fresh, and I genuinely couldn't let it go. I need to confess something. I've recently been feeling like a fraud when it comes to my weeb status, which is why I started reading classics like Hunter x Hunter or JoJo's and upcoming manga like Gachakuta and Sakamoto Days, but all the manga I mentioned today feels so different from anything I've read. And if you start reading them, maybe one day you'll be able to say, hey, I was there from the beginning. And that's a pretty cool feeling.